Welcome back to another New York Giants video. And today I have a lot to cover with the New York Giants starting their head coaching search. To be honest with you, I didn't expect it to start this soon. Expected to start sometime around now, but Joe Shane, someone we don't really know much about in terms of how he operates. He got the search started right away the day he was hired. On Friday, he interviewed Brian Daboll, and then they scheduled to interview Leslie Frazier on Saturday. So they got those two interviews out of the way. But Brian Daboll, after the game he had yesterday against the Kansas City Chiefs and Josh Allen, and the entire offense is exploding. It's definitely something that we haven't seen in the league. That game was just insane, with Mahomes driving down with 13 seconds left and putting them in field goal ranges. It was insane. It was just nuts. It felt like it was out of a video game. But less about the game. The Bills, more about the Bills. They've done it before against the Patriots, so it's not anomaly. We've seen it before. It's not like a one-hit wonder with Brian Daboll. So I'm going to get more into Brian Daboll later on, but it's just exciting to see as a Giants fan. And if we do ultimately hire him, and I think we will, him being the favorite and having the connection to Joe Shane, there's a lot to be happy about. There's a lot to look forward to as a Giants fan. A team that is ranked 32nd, dead last in the NFL in total offense, and bringing in a guy whose offense is always up there since 2017. That's really exciting, and I think the Giants can actually get something going on offense with all these weapons: Galladay, Tony, Shepard. You could even include Slayton in there, and then Saquon. And Daniel Jones' legs. So there's a lot to be excited about. But before we get into Daboll, I just want to bring up the guys that we've interviewed or set to interview. Dan Quinn was the first guy that came out. The Giants had requested the interview. That interview is happening today, the day I'm recording this, which is Monday. Leslie Frazier we interviewed on Saturday. Try to get 2 interviews from the Buffalo Bills before that game yesterday, in case they did win and go on to play in the AFC Championship game. So great forward thinking by Joe Shane, really being proactive there. Who else do we have? We also have Brian Flores set to interview this upcoming week. And we also have Patrick Graham, our DC for the last 2 years. He's also set to interview. Don't expect him to get the job, but he definitely deserved an interview. And John Mara and the rest of the Giants is showing the respect to him for the job he's done with this defense the last 2 years. And also the Bengals defensive coordinator Lou Armano. Hopefully I'm saying that right. He's also set to interview. I think we've already interviewed him. So a lot of candidates already here, and Brian Daboll set to have his second interview tomorrow. News came out today that was going to happen tomorrow, so that's really exciting. Brian Daboll, I think he's set to be the favorite. I think him having that connection with Joe Shane definitely helps the Giants. A lot of fans want him, me included. I think he's definitely at the top of my list. But what scares me is his connection to Miami. He's coached there before. He has a connection with Tua Tagovailoa, them both being from Alabama. Daboll was his offensive coordinator, and if I was Miami, I would definitely want to bring in Daboll because Tua had a lot of success under Daboll. It was Daboll's decision to put him in the national championship game, benching Jalen Hurts, and ultimately beating the Bulldogs. So it seems like Daboll knows how to work with Tua, and I think that's one of the reasons why Miami let go of Brian Flores. Thinking if you get in Daboll, and they want to rock with Tua, so bring in a guy who knows Tua inside and out. But if you're the Giants, you're bringing him in. You can't hire him yet just because of the Art Rooney the rule. You can't hire a head coach or a GM before you interview a black head coach or black GM. So I think it's a great rule, obviously, but we still have to let the process roll out. And I think after Brian Flores is interviewed, we'll get to know who our head coach is, whether it's Brian Flores or it's Brian Daboll. I think those are the top 2 right now. Don't really expect Dan Quinn or Patrick Graham or Lou Armano or all these other guys. I think, you just have to bring in these guys for interviews. If someone blows you away, then you consider taking a chance or whatever. But I think these two are the favorites right now, and I think you can't really go wrong with either of them. Brian Daboll having a great offensive scheme with Buffalo, and Brian Flores having success with Miami, winning 10-9 games respectively the last 2 years with them, and nearly making the playoffs both those years, but fell short. Had the 8-game win streak with Miami this year, but they couldn't make it. I think they lost to the Saints or something. But less about Brian Flores, more on Brian Daboll. I have a couple of quotes to bring up. It seems like a lot of players really love playing under Daboll. I think they respect his open-mindedness and creativity, and he's a guy who loves to get everyone's input. He's collaborative. Something the Giants tried to do with Joe Judge after Jason Garrett was fired, but that just didn't work. No one really knew how to operate a successful offense, or an offense that was at least league average. But Brian Daboll's offense is way above league average. I think it's obviously one of the best in the league, comparable to the Chiefs and the Packers and the Cardinals. But a couple quotes from people around the league. This is one of them. This is from Dawson Knox, their tight end, who had 2 touchdowns against the Patriots a couple weeks ago. He's their number 1 tight end, and he had some great things to say about Daboll as well. So Dawson Knox, even during the week, he's bringing the juice on the sidelines too. Knox said, he's all about giving us confidence. And then when the game starts, he is calm, cool, and collected. When he comes in at halftime, he's always got a good adjustment for us. No one expects a roller coaster with him. You're not going to get crazy highs and crazy lows. This was said after the game against the New England Patriots. So a lot of positives from here. It seems like Daboll is not just honed into his game plan. He's ready to adjust even at halftime or even during the game. That's something we saw with Patrick Graham on the defensive side, even coming up plays during the game going on. But so it seems like, Daboll is ready to take an input from his players, his coaches, and not a guy who's, egotistical. He's, if there's some faults in his game, he'll grow on it, he'll correct it. And he's all about the players. Obviously, there was stuff that came out that Daboll calls his players, and it's not always about football. And he just doesn't call them. He FaceTimes them for some reason. So he's a players coach. He definitely respects his players. He respects how hard they work, and he'll definitely push them. But he knows their limits. He knows how hard to push them, and he knows that these guys are people too. They're not machines where you could just push them day in and day out. So that's great news. I think the players really respect him for doing that and understanding that. The next quote and next thing I had was, there's an egolessness, former associate Eric Mangini. I think he worked under Mangini for 2 teams, and this was from Buffalo News in 2020. Stephon Diggs also had some great things to say about him. He said he lets guys play to their strengths and lets guys just be themselves. One of Daboll's former quarterbacks, Brady Quinn, said he is a people person. He's a guy that I think a lot of people love. So there you have it again. Stephon Diggs, one of the best receivers in the league. He has some great things to say about him, saying that he lets players play to their strengths and not their weaknesses. So that's, again, something we tried to do with Joe Judge and Jason Garrett, but just didn't work. But hopefully, Daboll having all the success, you'd expect him to know, be able to recognize the strengths of players and understand the weaknesses and try to cover up those weaknesses. A great example of that was Patrick Graham. 2 years ago when we didn't have that second corner, Isaac Yiadom was the starting second corner, and he knew exactly how to cover that up and minimize his targets and yardages from the receiver on the second corner. So it seems like if Brian Daboll can do a similar thing, but with the offense, and maybe obviously with him being the head coach, he has to do the same thing with the defense. That'd be a great thing, and he's done it. He's done it with Buffalo this year. Gabriel Davis being a late round pick, he had 4 touchdowns against Kansas City. So it seems like he knows how to work with these players, understand what their talent. There's some things that guys are good at, there's something guys aren't, and I think him having all that success, it just proves that he knows how to understand people, and not just them as players but as people, as we saw from Brady Quinn. So uh, you know, there's a lot of things that people say, and it's like the cons. I guess you could say that he does have Josh Allen. Josh Allen's a great quarterback. We saw what he did yesterday, and what he's been doing the last couple of years. But Josh Allen coming out of Wyoming, he wasn't regarded as one of the he wasn't regarded as one of the best prospects or like a generational talent. He was really raw. A lot of people called him a bust right after he was picked at 7th overall. There was a lot of weaknesses to Josh Allen's game. Accuracy was one of them, decision making, and on all that kind of stuff. And in Wyoming, he ran a completely different offensive system. And then Daboll gets his hands on Allen in 2018 and completely changes what Allen used to do. Allen barely ran any RPO plays in college, and that's what Daboll's system is mostly made up of. So, we've seen that Daboll understands what the players can be good at, even though they haven't been in the system before. This also could be, just Daboll implementing what he thinks was right, but them having success, you'd think that he game planned and made up that entire offensive playbook based on their new quarterback that they selected. I kind of want to go over their offensive stats under Daboll and how much they ran the ball, how much they passed the ball, and all that kind of stuff. So here it is. I'm not going to look at 2009 to 2012 because he wasn't with Buffalo, but 2018 he took over. So in 2018, they ranked 30th in the league in terms of yardages and 30th in points. This was under Tyrod Taylor. So this was with Josh Allen at quarterback. But again, he was a rookie. Josh Allen had a lot of things he needed to correct and build up on. And Tyrod Taylor was a starter for a couple games, and then Josh Allen took over. Rush attempts, they were 6th in the league, and you'd expect that with a rookie quarterback. You expect him to run the ball, especially with Josh Allen being a running quarterback or a guy who can run the ball. Rush yardage, they were ranked 9th in the league. Pass attempts, 28th. And pass yardage, they were ranked 31st. So it seemed like Brian Daboll kind of understood that Josh Allen needed time to develop and grow, so he relied more on the run game. But as we see the years go on, we'll see that he relies more on the passing attack. So in 2019, they improved in the yardage category. They went from 30th to 24th, and then points per game they improved from 30th to 23rd in the league. Rushing attempts, they stayed the same at 6. Rushing yards, they improved from 9 to 8th in the league. Passing attempts, it went up from 28 to 24. Passing yards, it also went up from 31st to 26th. And then 2020 and 2021, that's where we really saw the leap in Josh Allen and this entire Bills offense. So they were ranked 2nd in total yardage on offense, 2nd in points, and 17th in rushing attempts. So we see their confidence in Josh Allen rose. They saw the level of play in Josh Allen increase, so they relied more on Josh Allen. And their rushing yards per game went they were ranked 9th and 8th, and then that dropped all the way to 20th. Again, they relied more on the passing game. Passing attempts went up from 24 to 11, and passing yards went all the way from 26 to 3rd best in the league, which is really impressive. I think that year they completely changed their offensive game, their offensive playbook, and they really based on Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs. And then 2021, this year, their yardage went down from 2nd to 5th. Their points per game stayed the same. They were still ranked 2nd. Rushing attempts, they ranked the same again, 17. Rushing yards, they were ranked higher from 20 to 11. So Brian Daboll recently has found success in the run game. A lot of that is due to Josh Allen, but towards the end of the year, we saw some improvement from Devin Singletary and even Zach Moss. Passing attempts went from 11th to 8th. So again, relying more on that passing attempt in the arm of Josh Allen. Passing yards, they dropped from the 3rd best in the league to 7th best in the league, but again, relying a little bit more on the rushing game later in the season. And they were up in a lot of games, so they had to, even though they aren't that type of team to run the ball even at the end of games, It seemed like they were trying to do more of that later in the season. So, Josh Allen, he's improved. The growth and development in Josh Allen is Brian Daboll has a lot to do in that. Passer rating wise, Josh Allen was 68th coming into the league the first year. That rose all the way up to 85, then 107, and then this past year 92. So a little bit drop off from his third to fourth year, but still, that's still phenomenal. The amount of growth Josh Allen has, it's not just because of Josh Allen and the weapons they put around him. Obviously, he has a little bit to do, a little bit it has to give, you obviously have to give a little bit of credit to Stephon Diggs and that offensive line that they've built. But Brian Daboll, huge part in it. And it's most of the offense, if not all of it, is designed by Brian Daboll because their head coach Sean McDermott is a defensive-minded guy. So all of that pressure is put on Daboll. He has to come up with everything. Bills fans came out and said that his play calling is a little bit sus at times. But if you're the New York Giants, are you really worried about that? It's sus at times, but most of the time it's pretty good, and after watching the last 2 weeks of the Bills in the playoffs, you can't really point a finger at Daboll saying that his offense is bad. So 5 drives, all 5 touchdowns against the Patriots, so that's really impressive against one of the best defensive minded guys in the league. And having that performance against the Kansas City Chiefs, it's just crazy to think what Daboll has done with his team, and a guy that a lot of people considered a bust coming out of college. He's turned into one of the best quarterbacks in the league. So that's you would expect him to do something like that with Daniel Jones. Not saying that Daniel Jones is going to have that Josh Allen type of leap. But you could compare the situations of both offenses. Daniel Jones, a guy who could run, who was pretty accurate with the ball. He doesn't have the biggest of arms, but he could totally drive the ball downfield. Has one of the best deep balls in the league statistically. So yeah, Brian Daboll, if he does come in here, I'd expect him to know what he's doing on the defensive side. On the offensive side, sorry, but he has guys like Galladay, Tony, maybe Shepard if he stays. Slayton's supposed to have that Gabriel Davis type of effect. Both late round guys. Gabriel Davis is their deep threat with Buffalo, and that's what Darius Slayton is supposed to be. Obviously, Slayton has the drop issues with the Giants, but that's definitely something that could be corrected. And then you have Evan Ingram and Kyle Rudolph. I don't expect Ingram to be with the team anymore. Kyle Rudolph can get cut, and then you have Caden Smith. But let's say we draft a guy, later in the rounds in the draft. It's not like the Bills have a top 5 tight end in Dawson Knox, but they could work around it. They know how to implement them and rely on the tight end when it's needed. And Buffalo doesn't have a running back like Saquon Barkley. Saquon Barkley, who can do it all. You could line up in the backfield, obviously, as a running back and even as a wideout. So there's a lot of things you can do with Saquon Barkley, Tony, Shepard if he's still on the team. But there's a lot of versatility. There's a lot to be hopeful for with the Giants. And if we fix this offensive line in the draft or through free agency and bring in an offensive-minded guy like Brian Daboll, this offense could see a huge leap from being 32nd. Even if we're league average, that's still a huge leap. It's not like with Buffalo, Brian Daboll took their offense from being mediocre to the best in the league in a year. It takes a couple of years to develop everyone and get to know everyone, their strengths and everything. It doesn't happen overnight, but I definitely would expect to see some improvement. With that being said, I think Daboll is the favorite. His connection with Joe Shane is definitely crucial. But have to look out for the Miami Dolphins, who Daboll's coached for before and has that Tua Tagovailoa connection. But I think he's the favorite, obviously, again. And I would be surprised if he lands somewhere else. But there's still other guys out there. But obviously with any head coach, it's not a given. Even with Brian Daboll, there's a lot of things you could point at and say, he does this wrong or does this wrong. But at the end of the day, when you're picking a GM, when you're picking a head coach, it's always 50-50, no matter what the credentials are. So I think that's going to do it for this video, and see you until next time.